Hey y'all, back with ENL 51, Rap as Poetry, week 5. Out of 6 weeks, we're heading into the final stretch. Um, so yeah, as with last week, I hope you all are doing well and managing with the smoke in the air and the wildfires. I hope you and your families and loved ones are safe. And now with the stuff going on in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and across the country, um, really scary, strange times to be living in. Remember when I was planning for this class, as I was like starting to put together the syllabus and think about what I wanted us to cover, was when George Floyd was murdered by police in Minneapolis, and the whole country broke out into protests and uprisings in response to that. So it's wild. We started out this summer with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and now not even full way through the summer, the quarter, we've got another terrifying, terrible case of police violence against Black folks. Um, yeah, so I hope you all are managing and surviving. And if you need anything, if there's anything I can do to support you, feel free to email me and get in touch with me and let me know. But we'll jump into the material this week. I didn't plan it. I preset the themes of each week. But I'm trying to share my screen here and talk at the same time. It doesn't really work. The material this week, the theme for this week is violence, death, and elegy. Major themes in hip hop and in life. Elegy is just to start out with, it's like a poetic form or a mode, maybe, a kind of poem that's meant to express mourning and grief, usually for a dead loved one or a dead beloved public figure or something like that. Not to be confused with eulogy, though they're similar in a lot of ways. So the poet Tara Betts, she has an essay you can look up online. I think it's called Life is Good, at the Poetry Foundation website. But in that essay, and I saw her give it as a talk once, or a version of it, Tara Betts says that hip hop is the home of elegy. And she's saying that hip hop is always about wrestling with death and loss and trying to think about what those mean in our lives. So I've got some short notes about that on the lesson this week. I chose to share a whole poem by Lucille Clifton. You've maybe seen the ending of this poem shared on social media, or I have a ton, but I'm friends with a bunch of poets, so there's that. But I want to share the whole poem that I think is really powerful. And Lucille Clifton was a wonderful Black woman poet of the mid and late 20th century. I always teach some of her poems in my literature classes here at UC Davis. Cool. Violence, death, and elegy. So there's a few different kinds of songs on the list for this week. There's like specific remembrances of dead loved ones, like Pete Rock and CL Smooth's They Reminisce Over You. Is a classic and one of the greatest remembrances. And the B-sides, we've got Bone Thugs and Harmony of the Crossroads. It's similar, kind of specific elegy for a specific person. And then there's songs that report violence, or maybe even kind of advocate violence or glorify it in a way. Obviously, we know that's a big part of hip-hop tradition and culture. And as I say in my notes on the previous page of the lesson, there's always different reasons, different purposes why specific artists in specific songs are talking about and reporting violence. There can be a lot of different purposes. And our goal as analysts, as students of the game, is to ask why. What are the purposes? What are the differences between these songs? What techniques does each rapper use to accomplish their specific purpose? So we've got Tupac, Me and My Girlfriend. It's a song that reports and maybe even glorifies violence in a way, but also kind of digs into and analyzes the causes of violence and the social context of it. A literary device you may want to know, may want to think about how it's working in this song. Tupac uses an extended metaphor. He is talking about his gun, but he calls it his girlfriend, and he uses the extended metaphor, the language of romance and love and girlfriend relationship to talk about his relationship with guns and violence. So you might ask, why does he do that? Nas has a song where he takes it a step further, and he has a persona song written in the persona of a gun. It's called "I Gave You the Power." Forget. Yeah. So it's an extended metaphor that Tupac is using. It's a literary device that you may want to be familiar with, especially for the exam. Next up, we got the Notorious B.I.G. "Warning." This is a very violent song, and I love it. I think it's brilliant and clever and cool. And then it troubles me that I find it so cool, that I'm attracted to or interested in his discussion of violence and like technological violence, that he has C4 and all kinds of stuff in the song. So similar to Tupac, Me and My Girlfriend, he seems to be glorifying violence, but it has a lot different kind of stakes, a lot different context, and a lot different techniques that he uses to talk about violence in this song. Well, another literary device that you may want to be familiar with that Biggie uses in Warning a few times, it's called metonymy or a metonym. It's a fancy word for kind of when you use an image. It doesn't have to be an image, but when you use an image that's associated with something else in order to stand for that something else. So Biggie says, like, one of my favorite lines, there's going to be a lot of slow singing and flower bringing if my burglar alarm starts ringing. And just that like small image has so much style to it. It's a metonym because he's using slow singing and flower bringing to describe what happens when someone dies, when you have a funeral or wake or whatever for them. But it's just stylish to say it that way, right? He has a lot of metonyms in this song, a lot of metonymy, or a few at least. He says like, criminals want to lower my decimals, something like that. He uses decimals to talk about his wealth, his finances, his material possessions. So that's another metonymic substitution. So these are just examples of how you can use literary devices or the terms of literary devices to notice highly specific, stylized things that rappers are doing to add flair to their songs, to make particular rhetorical suggestions or connections, stuff like that. Outkast on the required songs for the second week in a row. Return of the G. This is I think it's from Aquemini also. Incredible song. Especially Andre 3000's verse. His verse is written really strangely. He doesn't use end rhyme in the way that we're used to in rap. He does something very different in his verse, and I wonder what like the significance and the effects of that are, what that's doing for him. And I have some ideas of like how it jars us out of our expectations, how it allows him to just go really hard, but also be totally individual in his style. Yeah, I love that verse and that song. Jean Grey, My Story. She's a wonderful underground rapper. Up until recently, a lot of people used to say that she's the best woman rapper in the game. She's certainly one of the most talented, but we've got a lot more folks that have come up and to be a part of that conversation over the past 5 to 8 years, which is great. But still, Jean Grey is a wonderful underground rapper. And this song, talking specifically about her experiences with abortion. And so it's heavy, intense subject matter. Just a heads up, it has some kind of suicidal imagery as well. So it's really heavy and difficult to listen to, painful, and yet it's also beautifully, brilliantly written. And so it's a much different kind of encounter with violence and death and elegy and kind of what she's trying to accomplish in talking about these issues. Finally, on the required songs, we got Kendrick Lamar, Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst. It's sort of like two songs wrapped into one. I'm more interested in this particular week's themes with the first half, Sing About Me. I would have put I'm Dying of Thirst on last week's Spirituality and Identity list, but since it's one song, I don't know. I'm not sure. Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst. Really interesting and compelling song conceptually. Another literary device to throw at you, he writes this song in persona, or he uses persona. He develops, in poetry, we say a persona poem is a poem where someone is speaking in the voice of another character, whether it's a historical figure or a real person or a fictional figure, or even like something kind of abstract, a persona poem from the voice of the sun or whatever. And so this song, he uses persona. He speaks in the voice of specific characters that he sort of invents. We ask, why does he do that? What does that allow him to accomplish? What does that do for this song and its themes? Um, and then, you can kind of spin out that idea of persona more generally to think about how a lot of rap artists, even if they're not speaking in the voice of a specific character that they invented, how they kind of create a persona of themselves. How is, look at the list this week. Man, this list isn't a super great list for my point here. Eminem is the classic example, and I didn't really want to go there, but whatever. So what's the difference between like Eminem and Slim Shady and Marshall Mathers? They're not exactly distinct characters, but they kind of represent different aspects, different personas of who he is, right? So B-sides, a lot more songs to dig into there. I put more Blue in Exile, which I just wanted to draw your attention to again. I think their 2007 album, Below the Heavens, is a just excellent example of mid-2000s indie rap and how it dug into the golden era sound and did something really new lyrically on top of that sound. Oh, The Uncluded is an underground rapper named Aesop Rock and a kind of indie folk singer, Kimya Dawson. They made a record together, and it's super weird and interesting. That song is an elegy for Minneapolis rapper Eyedea, Eyedea, one of my favorite rappers growing up. He died probably close to 10 years ago now. So that song is an elegy for him. Oh, and the video, I highly recommend you check out the video for Flying Lotus featuring Kendrick Lamar, Never Catch Me. It's beautiful, it's moving, it's powerful. I really hope you watch it. Yeah, finally, this week I'm not assigning a chapter from the Adam Bradley book, The Book of Rhymes. None of those chapters do justice to the themes we're looking at, and especially given the times we're living in right now. So I wanted to give us a break from Adam Bradley. And I wanted to give you a different piece of prose to read instead. It's an essay, a personal essay by June Jordan. She was a Black poet, feminist, essayist, writer, badass. And this is like my all-time favorite essay. It's about police violence. It's about Black English as a language or dialect. It's about issues in Black life. She wrote it in the mid 80s, I think 1984 actually. And so it's in some ways a much different time than we're living in now, and in other obvious ways, fucking the same. So I think this is a beautiful essay. I highly recommend you read it. If you can't deal with more emotional stuff about police violence right now, maybe just put it on the back burner and come back to it when you feel like you have the emotional space for that. Yeah, but I'm curious to see what you all think of this essay. If you read it, feel free to email me about it. Then some great poems, as usual. Nate Marshall, I love that poem. I think you're going to like it a lot. Prelude. Hanif Abdul Rakib, we've read another poem of his earlier in the semester, or summer. We read Ode to Drake ending with Blood in a Field, I think maybe the first week. Now we've got Ode to Jay-Z ending in the rattle of a fiend's teeth. Complicated, but really interesting poem. And finally, Hugh Min Win, Politics of an Elegy. Not exactly a hip-hop poem, but asking the kinds of questions that I think will help us dig into this week's material, especially for the class. So that's what I've got for you all this week. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to email me and let me know. Other than that, I hope you have a nice week. I hope you're hanging in there. I hope this week's work, I know it's going to be heavy, but I hope it's also powerful and educational, instructional in a lot of ways. Cool. I'll talk to you soon.